everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Getting Down to Business. I'm Ashley Curtis, Assistant Director for the Bishop Center for Ethical Leadership.
And I'm Jill Brown, Academic and Career Advisor with the Moon College of Business, also here on the St. Pete campus. And today's show focus is on leadership.
Yes, Jill, I am so excited because we have the Chancellor here with us today to discuss one of my favorite topics, leadership. She just completed the Yale Global Executive Leadership Program. Welcome back to our show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right. And this is season 6, and we've decided to go with a series of 6 rapid fire questions.
Ooh, love it.
All right. You're our first, I was about to say victim for this experiment. You're our first guest for this. All right. I'm going to kick it off. What's one word that you would use to describe yourself?
Fun.
What's one thing that motivates you?
Again, I can only have one word. What motivates me? A story.
Ooh, all right. What's one way that you relieve stress?
First of all, I don't know that can be one word. Playing with the kids. Doing something
yeah.
with my family.
That's good. Favorite job you've ever had?
Bartending.
If you could have a different profession than your current role, what would it be?
Bartending. Now, anything that I get prettier with each round is a pretty good job. At one point I actually had stopped working as an attorney and started selling off my belongings. I took a job running a dive shop in the Caribbean.
That's right.
And so, and maybe I'll do that again one day. You never know.
What's one way that you inspire kindness?
I think you model kindness, right? And how you treat others.
Good one. All right. So thanks for playing. Now let's get down to business. So there are so many ways that people define leadership. When we talk about leadership scholarship, that's probably one of the most things that there's a variety of definitions. But we're curious, what does leadership mean to you?
I think, through leadership, you can guide, you can inspire, you can influence. I think it has so many ways to move us forward. And really, at the end of the day, it's really that positive relational energy that you can bring to a situation that helps with growth or progress or some kind of movement. And so that's kind of how I think of leadership.
And for you, why does leadership matter?
Well, it fosters collaboration. It drives innovation. When you think about resilience and direction, I think I've tried to stop using the word change and talk about evolution, because I think change evokes that maybe something we did in the past was wrong.
Yes.
But in the evolution of how we move forward, I think it's really critical in having that progress and having challenges, but also in tempering the change of tides. I think Franklin Roosevelt said something to the effect of that. Smooth seas never made for a great sailor, right? And
Yeah.
so, some of the choppiness of life is part of what helps us be really good and steady for others.
I love that.
I like evolution instead of change, because change invokes like pressure, tense, stress itself. As we mentioned at the beginning, you completed the Yale Global Executive Leadership Program. And we've heard a little bit in some of your updates to the campus, but if you'd share with our listeners some of your favorite sessions or key takeaways?
So first of all, I'm just going to say this is an incredible program, and I'm not doing a commercial for Yale and the Y Gelt program, but if I could send like my team to it, I would. It's so good, and there's so many different facets, and it's everything from a drama professor coming in and talking about big bubble energy to we were doing baby Python coding for AI. And at one point they're like, you remember this from calculus? I'm like, dude, I haven't had calculus since the 80s. Like, what are you talking about?
So you will use your calc.
You will use calc, as it turns out. But when I think about some of the specifics, so Emma Sapala, she has a book called, I think it's called Sovereign. She did this segment talking about emotional sovereignty. And that you have to be steady to be steady for others. And so one of the things that she described was that we live in this Red Bull state of mind. So if every thought in your brain was a vehicle, what is your traffic? right? And I brought this back to work with my team.
I'm
to
hearing
talk
him
about.
honking right now already.
Some
So,
people are in
okay.
gridlock,
Yeah.
right? Some people are going across the Howard Franklin at 98 miles an hour, like they're filming Fast and Furious. Some people are in the roundabout. You know? But then she used a breathing exercise to demonstrate how, like, literally box breathing, sky breathing, can change your state of mind. And so I really loved that. There was another professor, Zoe Chance, and she had this great description about system 1 and system 2 and how we make decisions. And so she referred to as gator brain and judge brain. And so gator brain is our natural place. It's instinctive, reflexive, emotional. I think of it as the dog sniff test, right? If you ever met somebody and you're like, whoa, no, right? You don't know why, but you just know
Yeah.
no. Well, they got into the science. Both she and Dr. Sapala got into the science of that. When we physically are together, physiologically, our hearts will start to synchronize.
Yep.
Right? You cannot develop a meaningful online relationship because there is a lag between the video and what you're putting out. And our bodies sense that is inauthentic and a danger. And so we end up having this distance piece, like literally as a physiological response to someone else. So in her gator brain versus judge brain, I mean, she talked about looking at judges who were granting a parole, and they would start out more parole-ish in the morning, and as energy levels depleted and whatnot, it was more go to jail, and then you go to lunch. Oh, paroles are good. Go to jail, go to jail, go to jail.
Do
But
not be last on the docket.
right, exactly. Do not be at the end of the day. But it also got into the fact that our gator brain is the natural space we want to be in. And we have to work harder to move into that judge type of brain. And that's why when you have to really think hard through things, you're more tired because gator brain's our first place to go. And so she just had some really great examples of that. There was also a professor, Gautama Mukunda, who he's written a book about picking presidents. One of the things that was what my favorite was he talked about the leadership filtration theory, and that you essentially, based on circumstances, you go through when you're selecting new leaders within an organization, you either look for the model, which is somebody from within the organization or a similar organization. It explains why they become very homogenous, that the difference in your leadership is really what you actually accomplished and what a second, not selected, but pretty close kind of background person would accomplish. So that's the model leaders. And then there are the extremes. Somebody who maybe is outside, doesn't have the experience, kind of the dark horse kind of selection. If your company's going through bankruptcy, you're not going to pick a model, right? Because y'all ain't doing it right. So we're going to go with an extreme. And extremes have a tendency to have huge rewards, but they're high risk. Statistically, they aren't very successful. They're very infrequently successful. But if they are, it can really move the needle. And so their ability to impact leadership is really different. And then he took this theory and applied it to presidents over history, which also taught me I knew diddly squat really about history. And that Teddy Roosevelt should be my historical boyfriend because he was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I knew he was awesome. I just didn't realize how awesome he was.
Yeah.
But like interesting factoids came out of that. And I love those little bits of things to hang on to. So the percentage of psychopaths who are CEOs of companies is the same as in prison. And what he said is that psychopaths are really good at trying to figure out what it is you want. So if you're the hiring authority, they're good at going, oh, okay, you want this, and becoming it. And so, and oftentimes some of the failures in leadership is because we've selected people that we think really are a reflection of ourselves. And that's the one we choose, as opposed to really getting into the specific qualities of what we're looking for. And that the only thing that's a predictor of great leadership is intellectual brilliance. Not IQ, not EQ, not any of those kind of things. Intellectual brilliance. And when he went into defining that, it really was people who learn new languages, write books, can really wax poetic, everything from art to mathematics and everything in between. And that's where a lot of that Teddy Roosevelt information came out. And so to me, that was just really fascinating. And
Yeah.
that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this was, it was a year-long program. We were on campus face to face for 5 weeks, spread out over that year, and then did online pieces. And we've even been meeting as a team since then. It was a really incredible program.
Nice. I want to come back to something that you mentioned at the beginning, right? Where you're talking about the physical distance with online. So we are now in an age where online is inevitable. Um, a lot of companies introducing remote work and holding on to that. Did they talk about any strategies of how to overcome that? Or as you were learning, did you think of, how might I work past this obstacle, if you will?
Yeah, we did. We got into a lot of discussions about what works and what doesn't work. And mind you, in this program, there were 37 participants, 17 countries represented, and so we really had a chance to look at this in a global context. I don't mean to burst anybody's bubble, but the outcome was not, wow, that's how we should move forward. We should lean into more of that. The outcome was that we're losing the ability to navigate networking,
Mm.
right? And especially
Mm.
for the jobs that
Yeah.
you guys do, right? That networking piece is so critical to success. There are obviously different jobs that can be more successful in that environment. My background is from hospitality. I can't run a hotel.
Yep.
I can't run a restaurant from my basement in my jammies, right? And I would really like to sometimes, but that's just not optimal. We're social creatures. We seek engagement, and losing some of those social skills is actually a detriment to us individually, but particularly within an organization. And so, but they didn't get into. It really was tied to in developing a relationship that you're not going to be successful in trying to develop a relationship in an online environment. So maybe that means you need to be in the office for the development phase or the beginning phase.
Mm.
One of the things that's really surprising to me is how often we live in that sense of, if we say, oh, we're going to come back to work. Oh my God, it's not forever. Let's try this for 3 months and see how we feel then. So we live in this strange sense of almost absolutes, as
Mm.
opposed to the beauty of businesses, the beauty of organizations is the opportunity to try and see where we're successful. And if we fail, what do we learn through the failure?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the last piece is, I think a lot of folks assume people are set up to be successful working from home. And that may or may not be the case. I mean, there's data that shows that people who work from home as a primary existence work 3.6 hours fewer um, daily, right? And so there are also people
I'm doing
who
it wrong then. I feel like I work more
I do
just
too.
because I'm not commuting and it's so easy, and I don't know. It just seems easier to be very focused and do what I need to do. There's no interruptions, distractions, things like that. I mean, yes, from the house, but still. I don't
Which
know.
I think is such a personal thing. I was having this
Yeah.
conversation with someone the other day. For me, being in the office, I feel so efficient. Like I get
Mm.
done. If I need to go into focus mode, it's when I close my door,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's different
But it
depending on
doesn't
who you
mean I
talk
don't
to.
appreciate being in the office.
Yeah.
And I'm all now about thinking about my heart syncing with someone else. I'm excited. But also realizing, hey, the impact when your brain is firing like Red Bull and you're bringing in this anxiety or stress, then it feeds the room. And that's where we always talk about leaders, or just each one has a responsibility to kind of bring that calm, to diffuse and be able to think, get out of the gator mode, I guess.
Well, I agree with everything you've said. I mean, when COVID first hit and I was in Colorado, I would start working at 6:30 in the morning, and I would work until 6:30 or 7 at night. And I literally will have forgotten to take biological breaks, no lunch, just boom, 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 boom. And what I found was I couldn't retain anything.
Mm.
That the drive to and from work was where I reprocessed a conversation,
Yeah.
where I thought of a follow up. I joked with my kids, it was like printing to my hard drive. And so in that period, when, I was like, I know we talked about this. I know I have 3 pages of notes. I haven't a clue what we came to. And so, in the do-over, I might be more,
Mm.
I think we were all trying to figure it out, right? But I might be more structured and programmatic in what I would want to do in that sense.
How did the program influence your leadership style?
Well, so first of all, part of it that we got a chance to sit down and do some individualized
Mm.
work with an executive coach. And in fact, what we did was the executive coach in advance worked with our direct reports, the second level of reports,
Mhm.
external folks. And so I'm not exaggerating. The report I got was 88 pages. I don't want to read 88 pages about myself. I know nobody does, including my mother. But it was fascinating to see yourself through the lens of others, um, and to look at like I think sometimes we cut ourselves, or maybe we don't cut ourselves enough slack. So my self evaluation was way more critical than the evaluation of these different other folks in the leadership group, that he met with, and they did written evaluations and things like that in advance. And I was much harder on myself in terms of how I felt I was being perceived or being effective or whatnot.
Mm.
Um, from there, though, bringing these different, it's like adding to your toolbox, right? Bringing these different approaches, tactics. Some of it, I don't necessarily do like a book of the month club, but I've always worked with my team utilizing different pieces. I've even brought them to some of our welcome back breakfasts that we've had at the beginning of the semester. So Hubert Jolie from Best Buy, who did the dinosaur medic example, I remember I talked about that. So it gave me new things to bring in, and for us as a team to really see what resonated with us, what didn't, what was applicable, how would it help us. I think having those clear objectives, open lines of communication, celebration. I'm big about recognition. And sometimes I'll say something, there's a double entendre, and people don't realize it because they don't know what goes on in the office. But I give gold stars. So when somebody goes above and beyond, kind of like in the SEC, you get, from the University of Georgia originally. Not, I did not go there, just for clarification, but my first job was selling Cokes there. My parents went there and I was born there. So I'm adopting it. But if a football player does something good, they get a sticker on their helmet,
Oh, that's
right?
right. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so to me, it's sort of that gold star thing in the workplace. And so, um, so that recognition. And then as faculty, in education, we talk about gamification of your class, right? We
Yep.
always talk about how do you gamify what we're doing. You gamify your podcast. So why don't we gamify leadership? Why don't we create the fun? And particularly at a college or university, this is a place where we should be embracing that. And so making sure that I bring those elements into it as well.
Immediately, I went to competition when you go to gamify and thinking about leaders being hyper competitive. But yeah, I mean,
Well,
it'd be an interesting, yeah.
because of the hurricanes, we did not end up having it, but we were in the process of challenging the students to a administrative student game of kickball,
Mm,
right? I mean, just
Mm.
just
that
Yeah.
what
type
are the
of versus,
elements where
yeah.
we can have fun and engage with each other? And the whole team brings stuff in. People send me articles to read or bring them in for us to evaluate as a group. And so it's not it leadership should be dialogue, right? It should be
Yes.
coming and figuring out, co-creating the architecture of what we want to be as a team and how we want to move forward to ensure that everybody's voice is at the table and that they're seen and valued and heard.
It's the relationship piece of leadership that we don't always talk about. Well, anyway. And now I'm just thinking about students and coming in for classes, coming in for appointments, meeting with us, career coaching, academic advising. I want to see a student. I don't mind the team's aspects as long as I still am able to see the student, and it's like reading their body language, but also seeing. And then I think students forget, like, your instructor is modeling a type of leadership and demonstrating things. What are you modeling as a student for other students? Those types of things that you don't pick up on if it is fully online, asynchronous, you know. I don't know. Just thinking about that relationship piece and how important, and just
It's the core, right? When we talk about leadership, really those relationships are the core to the foundation and trust that you build.
yeah.
Like The Five Dysfunctions of a Team is a book that really talks about what does it look like building a team? And without those relationships, you've got nothing.
Yeah. And our whole recent leadership dive, just with different trainings, but I just think about, they talk about the culture, how important it is. And then I just think about how much I learn and grow every day today's meeting, what I'm learning about leadership, things I learn with you every day, with your new Bellini and with the Bishop Center. And then Jeff is our associate director. I mean, we all bring such different perspectives and ways to strategize, process information. Jeff's coming from a military background, different, and again, his career trajectory. So anyway, we can keep going. I want to.
Well, and the other thing I think that's really, there's certainly an element of the relationships and how you get to see each other. But recently, the entire time I've spoken to somebody has been through Teams, and I had invited them to come to a function on our campus, and they're like 6'4", and I was like, I don't recognize you because I've only seen this much of you anyway, and now that's so far up, I don't have the same angle. And I know that sounds silly, but it's part of it changes. Like, oh, wait, what? And that's not what I want my first reaction to be, and seeing somebody I've talked to online. So I think it's really important we have that interaction as well.
I had that same exact shock when I met some people off of Teams that I'd been meeting with for like a year, right? Like once a month. And then all of a sudden I see them, I'm looking up like you. And I was like, I'm giving them a big hug. And I was like, oh, we do need to like see each other. And it's not always easy with the different campuses and such. But once a year, we need to get together. All right. Let's see. All right. A little different spin, but what were some of the strategic challenges discussed within the Yale program in regards to the operating in a globalized economy and ethical leadership? We've kind of started to touch on that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that came up a lot was really the impact of AI, and how do we ensure everything from privacy protections to intellectual capital, to our intellectual property and how that's preserved, to building a team in an environment. How do we not become so homogenized? Because AI wrote your manual for your company and wrote your manual for your company. And at what point are we able to truly differentiate? And so that was a big piece, really. What is the technology aspect to it? And then the ethical safeguards for that technology.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking of our students who are now using AI to write their resumes. And I just think to myself, yes, it's when you use that tool, it is homogenized. And so what that means is, if you're basically sending out the same resume to every employer regardless of who you are.
Well, and then sometimes AI is still struggling with accuracy or dates smidge, and at what point is it puffery versus just untrue? And for employers who are using AI to evaluate those, again, we're using the same system to create them and evaluate them. And so I think sometimes we're so stuck in, this is the way it was done when I was young, the application process, for example. When I was at Kennesaw State, we worked with a company called, we worked with the Mercedes-Benz Stadium when they were building the football stadium. They had 56 events a year. They needed 3,500 people to be consistently at the stadium for those events. So these are concerts and other big events and whatnot. To get their 3,500 people, they needed to interview about 75,000. And so they partnered with a company called Knack. And so what happens, you went in to interview for a job and you sat there, they gave you an iPad and you played a game. And at the conclusion, it told you what you had a knack for. And so you came in and played for 30 minutes, a video game, and it said, oh, you have a knack, you should be over in customer service. Oh, you have a knack, you should be over in food service. Oh, you should be in security.
Ooh,
and so
I like this.
So, very different than everybody send in your resume, and especially if everyone's using a same system-ish to create them. And so I think we need to really pressure test organizations on how do we evaluate what are the characteristics we're looking for, what are the experiences we're looking for, and how do they fit within our organization. And I think what happens is we default to send in your resume and a cover letter. And then we're like, oh, that cover letter's not designed for us, right? Because it wasn't scripted to us, or it had a different company's name in it or whatnot. So we're dinging people who might actually be a good fit. Maybe they're inattentive to a detail. Maybe they got
Yeah.
confused and attached the wrong document. But we ding them
Yeah.
out of the
We do.
game
Yep.
for something that may or may not relate to what it is they're going to do.
Yeah. Very true.
You know, my mind is spinning
Oh.
on that. Yeah.
Just thinking about the hiring committees I've been on, right?
But
Where
I,
things like
whether
that come up.
both sides of the table
Yep.
and the different questions and things that come up. And yeah, I would love to play a game instead and just see where my strengths and talents lie. And then they're like, oh, yeah. Or at least you have an opportunity to demonstrate that versus the pressure. Am I going to, like, you're prepping for certain questions or things. And then when you don't have that, you freeze, or it creates this weird, what was the word? Awkwardness, that versus if you're just trying to get to know someone, you know? And anyway, you have to be clear on both sides though.
So our last question for you, students who are looking to develop their leadership skills, what advice would you have for them?
That it's not, there's no end, right? When you're trying to develop leadership skills, that is lifelong learning. That
Yeah.
should be something that you continue throughout everything that you do. And it truly is that sponge moment. You want to sponge as much information as you can. It doesn't mean you're going to implement or utilize all of it. Leadership has zero to do with a title. It has zero to do with where you are within an organizational structure. And I see examples of true dynamic leadership on this campus every single day. And so you've got to figure out who it is you are and what you want to bring to the table.
Mhm.
And I'm not Pollyanna. I realize that not every day are you going to be able to bring your A game. That's why you have a team, right? There are things that happen in life, and you may be struggling with a health issue or a family issue or something like that. That's why that team is around you, right?
Mhm.
And part of that, avoiding that group think, is a leadership team. Like sometimes if we're all in agreement on something, we'll pick somebody to say no, right? And so your job is to tell us everything wrong with this idea, because otherwise you get stuck in that group thing
Yeah.
kind of element. So for a student to really pressure test, right? Is this a good idea? Is it not a good idea?
Mhm.
Uncertainty and a lack of clarity is not necessarily a bad thing. Knowing yourself, I think, is one of the most critical things to being an effective leader, knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. So in our pregame, one of the things I talked about is I'm dyslexic. I am not good at sitting down and writing lengthy, detailed emails. I don't want to read them either. And so, and part of that is just because I have to be in judge brain the entire time. And that's hard. And so I would rather walk 3 doors down and have a conversation. If I don't explain to someone why I'm doing that, though, their perception might be, oh, she's checking on me. She's seeing if I'm in my office and what I'm working on. No, she's gator braining. She's going to what's easy for her. And she's trying to see, can we have a conversation? We don't have to have a conversation right then, right? But if I don't know who I am and what my limitations are and what my strengths are, then it's really hard for me to be able to communicate that with my team so that we can figure out how do we work together. And so really understanding themselves and that they will change. What you're strong at today is not necessarily what you'll be strong at 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
Mhm.
And that evolution is part of growth. As long as you're growing, it's good.
All right. I'm excited. I
Yeah.
hope students are finding this informative, and also just hearing us. We want to see you come into campus, come into our offices.
Yes.
Help us build the relationship that we've already started, whether it was through orientation or an event on campus. What were you going to say?
Well, I think it's really important for students to know that they should ask, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to get a no, but ask. And I just met with 2 business students, and I don't want to out them on a podcast, but they were putting together a new app, and they were pitching it. They were looking for some funding, and they wanted to get my thoughts on what it was. So, and I just want you, 2 students, just say, hey, can we meet with the chancellor and run this by her? Yeah. I'm at a university. You know what I'm here for?
Yeah.
Students. That's
Yeah.
why I have my job. So But most students would never think that. At the end of the day, your professors are here for
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
Your staff is here for you. If you don't take advantage of those relationships, of meeting somebody, pointing to people, meeting somebody who literally can pick up a phone and put you in a job,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who can pick up a phone and connect you with somebody that changes your life, that is an opportunity every student has at this university, and they should take advantage of it. And if they don't blame other people,
Yeah.
right? That's on them to build the relationship and create that connection.
Yep. And it's so much easier for us to be able to call Raymond James or whoever and talk about, hey, I've got this great applicant for you when we actually know who they are. Right?
Yeah, I do.
Because you get to figure
Yes.
out, like through meetings, what are your strengths, right? What is an avenue that would be a great learning experience or just a good fit?
And I feel like that's exactly what we've done when we meet regularly with students. It's like you start to see, oh, you would work this company. They came in, we had them on the podcast. We got to know what they're looking for. And then when we
Yep.
meet with students, I mean, I did it with Grant Thornton, a lot of the accounting firms that I end up working with. So it is.
Yep.
Come see us. That's the bottom line. We hope you've enjoyed the leadership episode. We have several coming your way. And, just make sure to follow us, Getting Down to Business, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.